Annalie,
Hello.
thank you for joining me today. We collaborated together last year for the
Yes.
Confetti Diaries.
Hmm.
And I really what I'd like to do is just start out by letting you talk a little bit about what that was, how that came about. But before that, even what I always like to do, because I've done some of these interviews before, is I would like to hear you talk about you. I want to know
Okay.
who you are. I want to know where you're from because that stuff's always interesting to me. Like, where does this person come from and who are they and why, kind of thing.
Yeah. A little bit of context building. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will kind of I'll give you like the medium short version, and you can let me know if you
Yeah.
need to go fill in any more
Okay.
details.
Okay.
Um, I am a photographer, originally from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.
Mhm.
And I have lived in Los Angeles now for the last like a little over 10 years. Um, and as a photographer, I specifically do music photography. That's been my main lane and kind of full-time thing for most of the time I've been in LA. And even specifically within that, I specialize in tour photography. So
Mhm.
going out on the road with various artists and bands to document that world and just create content for them, and mostly still photos. There's a little bit of other things mixed in there, but so that's the kind of the gist of what I do. And as it relates to anybody listening to this, for fans of White House, and you and I collaborated last year on an exhibit called Confetti Diaries. So that relates to the most recent tour that I've been working on for the band Coldplay.
Mhm.
I've been with them for a little over 3 years now. And last fall, I had the opportunity to create a photo exhibit around just photos of the band that I had accumulated over the last 2.5 years at that point,
Mhm.
um, in a printed, like physical walkthrough gallery display format, which is really exciting, a really special opportunity for me because as a music photographer, and I would say at this point for a lot of different genres of photography, most of our output lives on screens, right?
Mhm.
And so, especially in music, it's very heavily focused on social media and digital press. So, last fall, the Coldplay tour came to like the end of its current chapter at the time in the form of a 2 week residency of shows at Wembley Stadium in
Mhm.
the UK. So that in of itself is very, very special because it's essentially like hometown shows for the band. It's a very like globally central area for like a lot of where their fans would come to see them. So extremely high traffic shows, and the fact that we'd be camped out in one place for a long time creates a special opportunity for us to create like activations that are part of the overall experience. And it's kind of just like Coldplay takes over the city type
Well, you can
experience.
essentially do more because you're going to be there for a while.
Exactly, which is
How many
something
shows
that
did they
like,
do in 2 weeks?
10. It ended up being a bit more than 2 weeks, which this is kind of a whole other saga. But there was a train strike or a tube strike while we were there, so we
Oh.
had to reschedule some shows, and it ended up being a bit more like 2.5, maybe close to 3 weeks, if I remember
Hmm.
correctly. So,
Hmm.
anyway, we were there for a long. This is a very long time relative to the touring world. Most
Right.
tours are spending one night in each city,
Right.
maybe two if they're like on the larger artist side.
Hmm.
So this was kind of certainly in my career, this was unprecedented. So it creates a really unique opportunity, right?
Yeah, outside of
Um,
a residency, I don't know if I have ever heard of anything to that degree. Outside of like, oh, Celine
like a
Dion's going to
Vegas
be in
residency or
Vegas for
like,
6 months or 10 years
it's
or however
usually
long
not.
it is.
Yeah, it's usually not part of a tour. It's like
Hmm.
we're going to camp out here in this city and like
Right.
you come to us. This is where
Right.
we perform.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really, really, really cool and unique. So there was a lot of like activations developed around this residency. outside of the actual shows themselves. And one of those things being a photo exhibit. So it was kind of a collaborative um, concept between myself and the Coldplay team. And it went through like a few different iterations of what that was going to look like. And then ultimately we landed on they would be creating like a fan village of sorts in central London, about a 10-minute walk from King's Cross Station in an area called Cole Drops Yard or Cole's Drop Yard. I've messed it up already, but if you are from that area, you know what I'm talking about. It's about a 10-minute brisk walk from King's Cross, and
Right.
so they had like a merch pop-up store and just like some other kind of yeah, just Coldplay branding around. And so it started out as like, oh, when else would we have the opportunity to set up an exhibit that is like relevant to the audience that would come to see it? Because I guess if there's enough draw by the photographer themselves, like maybe they're creating a show of like, here's my body of work across like multiple different artists or things like that. There just never really was an opportunity before this that presented itself that made sense. But this was like, okay, this is a specific subject, this is a specific band, and there's going to be tons of traffic of people that are interested in this subject
Yeah.
matter
Yeah.
coming through this one central area. So it really all just like aligned perfectly for it to be a huge success and like a really fun additional experience for people that were coming to the shows. So we partnered with a space called Lightroom, not to be
Yeah.
confused with Adobe
Right.
Lightroom, which,
Right.
yeah, that tripped a lot of people up. But it's a
Yeah.
beautiful building called Lightroom, and it's centralized around. They have like one of those 360 screening rooms that has
Hmm.
so they another part of the Coldplay activation fan village thing that they had set up there was they have a an album film that goes along with their most recent release at the time. And so they were doing showings of that, and it was designed to be like a 360 projection display. So that was happening in this building. And then they also, on the other half of their building, had a big, beautiful like hallway space that they typically used as like a gallery or some way to display um, 2D content that was adjacent to whatever film they were showing. So we were able to have this great, like, kind of partner content experience. So there was like a main front lobby with a huge, I don't even know how many feet tall ceiling, like multiple 2 to 3 stories tall. And
Yeah.
then a hallway around the corner that also had like maybe two-thirds of the images displayed there. And then what ended up being really cool, and I did not realize until seeing it in person, is that they also had access to a large outdoor plaza with benches that had like large framed backs that they would print like large format on site for these displays. And like it's meant to kind of advertise whatever's happening in Lightroom or happening around that area as in like a public access activity.
Sure.
So it was kind of like an overflow of the exhibit even that kind of like pointed people towards like, okay, everybody go to the Lightroom and check out this like photo exhibit that's in there. So it truly did like take over this whole little couple of blocks of the city. So yeah, that was, and we called it Confetti Diaries because I just over time kind of maybe confetti and my photos of Coldplay just kind of became synonymous with each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
It's just such a
Yeah.
colorful show, and I was like, that's super fitting. And it's kind of just, it's it's a diary. It's a visual diary of my experience of just going around the world with this artist. And so yeah, that was the show. And so then you guys were so lovely in partnering with me on this process because it was such a massive undertaking,
It was
and
big.
it was huge. And it's taking place in the UK, and I'm based in LA, and so never having really produced anything outside of the States, it's a little scary to do like probably the most important body of print work I've ever done in my life, and just
For
like
real.
where do I even start with this? And but I had worked with you guys a lot before with other client work because I do have a
Mhm.
background in wedding photography
Mhm.
when I was in Oklahoma, and then some in LA as well. And I was just like, man, if only like White House could produce this show, that would give me so much peace because like I know what the products look like and I know what to expect and I understand the process and I know it'll look good. And I just, I thought, well, let's just see. Let's see if that could work out. And you guys pulled it off.
It was great. It was a lot of
It's the
fun.
biggest shipping container I've ever seen in my life.
I bet there was so much work, and it's like you've said so many things that I have to try to remember. I like the whole Confetti Diaries thing was something I was interested in right from the get-go. And then as soon as I saw, I'm scrolling through images and I'm looking at your work, and right away you're like, well, I know where the name comes from. That makes total sense,
Yeah.
once you see the work. And I know that Coldplay is a piece of this, and they're, I mean, arguably right now the world's biggest band. It was certainly a gigantic tour, right? But
Hmm.
but this, and that's cool. That's great. And I think it's amazing that you've experienced all of that with them. But I'm interested, honestly, in knowing a little bit more about you specifically, because coming from Oklahoma City, I'm a Midwest
Hmm.
guy, and I don't even know if
Okay.
Oklahoma City considers themselves Midwest or South or what
It's
they
the
consider
perpetual
themselves.
argument, I think. Yeah,
It's
it's kind
like
of like I guess technically the South. It's physically in the South, but has a bit of like a Midwest attitude
it.
or
I
culture
feel like it
sometimes.
does. Like that's
Yeah.
it's kind of like in between, and so maybe
Yeah.
it's whatever is most convenient for it at the time,
Yeah.
depending on who you're talking to. But that story in and of itself is interesting to me because White House is in the Midwest as well, but again, that's the North. But you go from Oklahoma City to LA. That in and of
Hmm.
itself is a huge shift in culture and mindset and your work. And of course, you're not going to be doing that type of work on that scale probably from Oklahoma City, but you go to
Hmm.
LA and there's all kinds of different opportunities that exist. What I'm wondering is, did you go to LA from Oklahoma City thinking to yourself, this is what I want to do. This is why I'm getting out here. I want to have access to these opportunities that don't exist in the same way in the Midwest.
Yeah, that's a great question, and you nailed it. That's exactly what it was. Like I guess technically, you can tour from anywhere, based anywhere, but it's what you said was key in that like going to be in more of an industry hub helps
Yeah,
you be more available to take on the opportunities that are going to be the steps towards the bigger thing.
right.
So I think I could have done some of that, and maybe it's even more possible now with like how globalized social media is and like
Sure, sure.
and content, to do it from somewhere else. I think this was just the most efficient path for me, especially when I started, because I I think the last 10 to 15 year window has been the most massive jump in like the landscape of what it used to look like back then
Mm,
and now. Like it's
mm.
changed the quickest in that period of time. So yeah, I have no idea what it would have looked like otherwise, but that is exactly why I moved. And it was quite a stark jump. Like I never saw myself as somebody who was going to completely relocate their whole life. So if I was going to do it, it was going to be for a specific person or purpose, and I was going to just go big with it. So
Well, that
um
leads me to what else I was thinking. Was it scary? Honestly, I mean, I think it just sounds so big. It sounds like such a big jump or a big transition, I guess, to go from here to there, especially doing what you were doing. Because
yeah.
even weddings, I imagine in Oklahoma City are not what they are in LA. I know they're not. For me, downstate in Illinois is completely different than how they are in Chicago. We've done both,
Oh
and
sure.
it's just
Yeah.
not the same, right? And
Yeah.
I'm not even trying to say one's better or one's worse, or that LA is better than Oklahoma City, or vice versa, but it's just different. And so
Yeah.
when you're used to one, was it was it quite overwhelming or scary for you to even go through that
Yeah,
process?
absolutely. I think so. Here's the thing about being in your 20s is you have a lot of audacity. So I think that went a long way.
Well
And
said.
but yes, I was scared. I was definitely scared. I was not big on change.
Yeah.
I never pictured myself as someone who would leave Oklahoma City. My ambitions, like in my early 20s, was like, I'm gonna be the go-to music photographer in Oklahoma. So it's just like, okay, what does that even what does that even
Right,
mean?
right, right.
But that
Yeah.
was like as big as I could even really visualize anything at the time. And then let's see, I'm trying to think of like how to connect the dots from A to B. So at some point I became aware of like how touring worked.
Hmm.
Um, just growing up in Oklahoma City, like I would go to concerts sometimes and I loved that. And the more that I went to shows, I started to understand like, oh, these bands are like they're on a tour. So they're like stopping in cities along the way. This was like late teens, early 20s,
Sure.
probably when I was like connecting these dots. And then I was like, okay, so there's a system behind how all of this works. And then at some point, I became aware that there was like people documenting this process as well. It was definitely at that time was unless you were like a massive band, it was took more of the form of like, oh, a friend came along with us and they're just hanging out and like taking some pictures. Because that's there really wasn't an output or like an outlet for that at the time. There wasn't social media just yet to the point of like the way that we use it now.
Of course. Yeah.
It was more just for fun. Maybe some of the bands were putting it on like their Facebook business page or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So anyway, once I realized that that was a thing, I was like, that in a perfect world, like that's what I would do, but I just didn't see it being sustainable. And I don't think it really would have been at the time. Like
Right.
12-ish years ago, that wasn't really a full-time job for anyone, unless it was like a really massive band that had some place to put the photos where they could justify that being like a budget line item for the tour. Um, but anyway, it quickly progressed. And so I just, again, with a lot of, 25, 26-year-old audacity, just started like pitching myself to go out on tour. And I still lived in Oklahoma at the time and got ignored or turned down a lot. And
Mm.
I think, reasonably because they didn't have the vision for like, well, why would we need that? Like that just sounds like a hassle to bring an extra person and possibly
Yeah.
have to like incur extra expense. And I finally just got somebody to say yes. And it was a matter of like, let me just try this and see if it can benefit you guys. Like, you don't have to cover any expenses. Like, I just want to come out and like do this thing. And that artist ended up being the first band I ever went on tour with and continued to have a touring relationship with them for a couple of years. And they're still good friends of mine today. So it's just kind of this you just need one thing to kind of work, and then it will take whatever snowball path from there that it carves for itself. And so that kind of landed me in a like pop alternative genre path that I think eventually funneled me towards other artists like that kind of live in the top 40 radio
Hmm.
world.
Hmm.
And so that was an interesting thing that I didn't realize at the time ended up being really beneficial for me. Because I had a lot of friends that also ended up doing music and tour photography, but were working in genres that were like a little bit harder to um, maybe level up with.
Well, they're less mainstream, most likely, right?
Yeah, it's just
Like,
like it didn't necessarily funnel into like a mainstream genre, which it's
right.
still very fun to do, but
Sure.
it makes that sustainability aspect, like that income
100%.
sustainability aspect,
Yeah.
really difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you get
Yeah. So
do you, do you get nervous being
not
around
anymore. No.
famous people?
The first, yes and no. Like as I'm kind of getting used to their personalities and like figuring out what the dynamic is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me nervous. Just
Oh.
because, yeah, you just never know what the expectations are as far as like what your presence is going to be like. Sometimes artists are very on board with content and they even like kind of collaborate with you in that process and they become
Hmm.
it feels very easy and natural and you just it feels a bit more a like a friendship, like a productive friendship. And then
Yeah,
sometimes it feels like, you feel like their label forced them to take someone on tour with them, and they're just like, oh, we
right,
have to make another video, like,
right.
so it depends on the artist.
Sure,
But at
sure,
the end of the
sure.
day, it's like I know that they all understand the necessity of it, but it may just not be something they're excited about doing. It just depends.
To be with
um
somebody for such a long time, do you typically start off? I don't know how to word this, but I know there's a question here that I really want you to answer or think about.
okay,
You
go for
start
it.
off a certain way. I'll use poor words like maybe you're a little timid, or maybe you're a little more looking for feedback or wanting to know what they think and how they feel and what their expectations are. And then if you're with somebody for a while and that relationship gets cemented and you build a rapport, right, and maybe even become friends on some level,
Mhm.
do you find yourself over time kind of like going rogue to some degree, like doing your own thing that's more conducive with like what your style actually is, rather than just trying to capture things for maybe somebody else's vision, whether it's,
Oh.
whether it's the band or whether it's, their agents or whoever it is, their publicist or
Mhm.
whoever it is that you're dealing with. Do you get to the point where you have like a comfortability in maybe your own creative expression?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's less resistance to that even than you might think, at least with music clients, because the whole
Okay.
point of that is to make it cool and artistic and interesting.
Yeah.
So I think as long as you're consistently delivering what they need and what they can use, like music and tour photography is very high volume deliverables. So I can
Yeah.
always throw extra stuff in there that's like, oh, I took a risk, and like this is
And
what I
that's
did.
really what I was getting at. Yeah,
Yeah.
that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I do that quite a lot. And it helps kind of keep me entertained too. Because, when you tour with an artist, you're going to see the show at least 20 times, maybe 100, maybe more. So at a certain point, you've got to like play and keep it interesting. And they appreciate that too. I find like they don't want to have the same
Right.
content to
Right.
use
They want to see
every day.
different stuff. They want to see
Yeah.
something distinct and unique, right?
Yeah. So I'll usually have like an approach of I'll get a few things that are safe, that are like just kind of like the iconic hero shots, and then the rest of the time I'm just going to see how can I make this different than the last 37
Mm.
times I did it.
Hmm. Hmm. That's a challenge. That's a big challenge, I
It really
imagine.
is. Yeah.
Well, and then you have like you've been doing this for a while, and you've had lots of different experiences, I imagine, in different venues, of course, with different bands. What, real quick, can you just tell me what's the difference, or what are the first things besides the obvious ones that come to mind between a smaller venue, maybe smaller band, maybe a more intimate atmosphere versus Coldplay in an arena? I mean, there
Yeah,
has to be
that's a good
so
question.
much that's different between those two for from your standpoint.
Yes. I would say there's probably several things. Let me think what comes to mind first. So, it's more the bigger you get, the more compartmentalized everything is, and the more like procedured things become, I suppose.
Mhm.
So, like to kind of illustrate that, if you're doing a really small tour and say you're doing like a small club, there may or may not even be a photo pit. Like the front row of fans might even be able to like reach out and touch the shoe of the person
Right,
on
right,
stage. And so you
right.
kind of, which it there is this like really fun, sweaty, like irreplaceable energy that you have when you're in just like a really compressed space. There's something really like romantic about that,
Yeah,
like
yeah. There's an
artistically.
intimacy there almost. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't, it's just not really possible to replicate that on a large scale safely, at
yeah,
least. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, it becomes a lot more procedured the bigger that everything gets. Another thing is from a photography perspective, visually, there's differences that you may not like think about until you're in those situations. And one thing one thing that I actually really appreciate about Coldplay is they their production fills the entire space, even though they're in a stadium. I've shot
Yeah.
stadium shows before where it's like, I'd actually rather just be shooting at a 500-person club than this show because it's like, it's a stage that's far away in the middle of just a big black hole. And because like there's 10 times more audience than the size of the stage footprint.
Yeah.
So, unless you're shooting up close, the far away shots are not super interesting unless you get it at just the
Yeah.
right moment. Fortunately, with Coldplay, they they map out how to like extend the production into the entire audience. Like everybody's wearing like light up wristbands, so
Hmm.
there is light everywhere, which is huge.
Hmm.
That like makes my job so much easier. And then
100%. Yeah.
the production flare, the confetti, and things like that. Those are projected from different points, like out in the bowl as well.
Hmm.
Um, but if you don't have all of those elements, it definitely um, it's difficult. Like the production just doesn't reach quite as far in that big of a space compared to how easy it is to light up a room that only holds 1,000 people.
And when you have, again, I can't imagine how many images you're taking at these shows and how many, cards you're filling essentially. How, how do you, at the end of the show, where do you even begin to be like, or you're saying
um,
it's all about
well,
deliverables.
it's
Are you just giving somebody everything? Are you culling? Are you doing any edits? Like
Yeah,
what do
that's
you
a great
do at that
question.
point?
I'm a one woman show on tour.
Right.
So it's not as much as you think. Granted, I guess I don't really. Okay. This would be fun. How many? If you were to guess how many just raw photos I have total at the end of a day on tour, what would your guess be?
5 to 7.
1,000 or
Yeah.
100?
1,000.
1,000. Okay. So much less than that. I'm
Okay.
sure
And,
there's
and
somebody
that's,
out
and
there
I
that
went,
does that.
well, I went high on purpose because
Okay.
when we would do weddings, we were just shooting, 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 shooting. And then
Yeah.
over time, it was like we learned to not do that because it was a lot better for
Yeah.
us on the
Yeah. It's
back
like
end.
the lesson that everybody learns the hard way.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what we did. And what I was saying when you said it's all about deliverables, I thought, well, I wonder if she's just like constantly shooting and then she has all these images, but then somehow has a way to cull down really quickly and just pick a few out
Hmm.
from this, that, and the other. But
Hmm.
you're thinking about that even more so beforehand and not
Yes,
just
exactly.
it's not a spray and pray type of thing, right? I know.
Exactly. It yes and no. So there's a few different things to break down here. So as far as the spray and pray, it's more like that happens within a specific moment. Like I'm not doing that through the whole show, but if
Right,
there's like a lot of action happening within
right. Of
like a 10-second window, I might be like
Mhm.
going crazy on the shutter for a
Course.
moment just to make sure I get that. Because the thing about shooting concerts and sometimes even about shooting weddings that's different than like shooting in a studio is it's reactive shooting rather than directing. So it's
Because
like
there's
you
that
have to,
moment. Yeah,
yeah.
you're
So it's
there,
like,
and then there's that moment happening, and you got
mhm,
to get it. Because it's
yeah,
not like you're going to say, "Oh yeah, can you kiss the bride again?" We've
yeah,
said that a lot, and
exactly, yeah.
that has to be how a lot of similarities between weddings and tour photography or concert photography is because, like you said, it's reactive. I've never really thought about it that way.
Hmm.
You're there to document what's happening. You're not directing, like you said, the
Hmm.
way that you would in a studio or on a shoot in a field with a
Hmm.
family or whatever. Like it's happening, and you're there to get it. Is that right?
Exactly. Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah. And weddings are such a nice like combination of kind of both of those things because it's like maybe you've
Hmm.
got them for the portraits, you're directing that.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
that's you're more
Right.
control, but then yeah, during the ceremony, you are adapting to whatever is happening. You don't get to dictate any of that. And then maybe same thing with like a reception. Interestingly enough, a wedding reception is a really good practicing ground for shooting a concert.
Really.
If they've got like a DJ that has like the lights that are flying
Yeah.
around and
Yeah.
it's dark and there's a lot of movement. So I apply a lot of skills that I learned from shooting weddings towards music photography.
It makes
um,
total sense.
yeah. So back to your workflow question.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. I know there's so many details and things
There
that
is.
like, you wouldn't know about these nuances unless you did this job. Um, so I am very much anymore, especially if I've been with a band for a long time and seen the show over and over again. I'm
Mhm.
really pacing myself and kind of planning out what moments I want to get, and also leaving some window open for like just things to present themselves to me. But I really kind of have to like sit on my hands a bit, like throughout some of it, just to make sure I'm not overshooting. Because one thing about me is I hate culling. I hate it. So like the
That's
most
why
I
I
can
was
like,
asking.
yeah. And so to answer your question about like the number, if I can stay under 1,000 photos for the day,
Oh, wow.
that's good. Under 700 is like, okay, I feel proud of myself. Um,
Unreal.
so, and I actually think that's even unusual for music photographers. I've had other people, like maybe I'll be shooting a show or like a festival with other people on the team. And sometimes people will be like, oh, how many did you shoot? How many? And their jaw just drops when I tell them that number because they're like, oh, I shot 2,000 or 3,000. I'm just like, how are you
Well,
going
I
through all of
mean,
those?
I've seen people tell wedding photographers to shoot five, six, 7,000 images at the wedding. Like just shoot and shoot and shoot. And I just want to say, don't do that. So
Yeah,
like
yeah,
to hear what
I would
you're
tell my,
saying and where you're coming from is actually
yeah,
kind of refreshing for me because
okay,
I
it's
agree with
validating.
that. Well, a little bit, a little bit. And the other piece though is don't you think that your ability to pace yourself and you said sit on your hands, which I think is a great way to put it, because I think our inclination a lot of times, especially you're amped, you're anxious, maybe you're nervous, you're excited,
Hmm.
and that leads to typically shooting more, right?
Yeah, it's
And
like,
so
oh, I
for
need to be
you,
doing something.
yeah,
I
you
need to
have to
be,
be doing
yeah.
something, and if you're not, then you're missing it or you're not doing something right. And
Yeah,
you
yeah.
seem to have and I know that's got to be experience. There has to be a confidence there that you've gotten, and maybe those two are intertwined. But over time, I feel like you've gotten to a position where you have the confidence to know I don't need to be like constantly shooting. And in fact, that's going to be counterproductive, not only later, of course, but even now. Because don't you spend some of that time like actually being in the moment, and like thinking
Hmm.
creatively what you're going to do next, and you can kind of think ahead and plan things out.
Yeah, yeah, it's exactly. It's both that, like giving myself time to kind of process what I'm looking at,
Right.
and on like the Coldplay tour, for example, it might take me 5 minutes just to get from one side of the venue to the other. Like it's not I'm not just crossing a room, like I'm
Right,
going
right.
up 20 flights of stairs and running
Yeah.
across a football field.
Yeah.
So,
You're not going from the groom side to the bride side. You're
yeah,
you're going to the other side of
exactly.
the
Yeah.
arena.
Yeah. But for what it's worth, like here's the thing that people have to remember with tour photography specifically, not just music, but tour. If you're like on tour, you're shooting the same show over and over again, is like imagine that you shoot a wedding every weekend, you're a full-time wedding photographer. You're going to start to gain a confidence and kind of like know what moments you're waiting for and and like
Hmm.
what things are you don't need to be shooting 1,000 pictures of, and you kind of just
Yeah.
get that understanding of the process. Now imagine that you are shooting the same wedding, the same couple gets married, has the same wedding every weekend for a year straight. You're going to get that dialed in. You're not gonna take more than 1,000 photos of that
Oh,
wedding because you know
That
what
that
which
makes that makes sense. That does
yeah,
make sense, and,
yeah.
and I would imagine that would happen over time. But at the same time, like we were talking about earlier, that's a whole different type of challenge too,
Hmm.
right? Especially for like to try to mix it up a little bit or to try to get some
Hmm.
different results from what's essentially a very similar show over and over, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the essence of that benefit is that you know exactly when these moments happen, so you can plan,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what works, what doesn't, kind of like and to that point, it gives you the ability to like bend what works and what doesn't too. It's like, okay, well, I've got like the clean shots of this moment already. Like that's been documented. So let me play around with it and do these other things. Yeah, but essentially you know how it's all going to play out. And other than like the specific venue changing and like the crowd swapping out, those are the differences that you're going to want to like document. That might be a bit, you have to look at it differently every time.
Yeah, of
But
course.
there is so much of a benefit of just like having the same experience over and over again and having the confidence of like, okay, I'm going to get this shot over here that's like up in the nosebleeds. And then I know that within two songs, I can be over in that spot and get this
Right,
moment over here. So,
right.
yeah, it's a lot, it becomes a lot of muscle memory. And I do count it as a benefit in that sense, as far as like, if I'm unfamiliar with what I'm about to photograph, it's a show I've never seen before, it's an artist I've never
Mhm.
worked with, I am inevitably going to overshoot and shoot
You're going to
more
shoot more.
than,
Yeah.
yeah, than on a tour. Yeah.
Mhm. Makes total
Because I'm like,
sense.
I don't know what's about to happen.
Now you said that at one point you said something like so much of what you do, what photographers do in general, is digitally based, right?
Hmm.
You see it on a screen, or as you're looking through your images even later, or whatever software people use. But let's talk a little bit about the whole print piece, right? I
Hmm.
would like to hear you talk about how you experience your work printed as opposed to what we do every day is you see it on the back of the camera, you see it on your laptop, you see it on your editing screen, whatever. How is it for you to even go into Confetti Diaries and see your work there? What is that like? Is that has to be like I get excited thinking about seeing my own stuff periodically. What was it like for
Yeah.
you to
Yeah.
see all of that there?
Oh, it was overwhelming. It was emotional. Yeah, it kind of like, our social media on screens is a part of our everyday life. It feels very normal. And even when it's exciting if an artist shares my work, and like maybe the first couple times I'll see like my stuff pop up with a new person, I'm like, ooh, that's exciting. And so to see it in printed form, like large format, hanging on a wall, like all together. First of all, it allows you to look at it as a body of work rather than just
Mm,
one image at a time. So that's
yes,
really cool.
you can
And
see it.
I
Yeah.
think it just, yeah, it's like a more physical representation relative to let's see, what's the word I'm looking for? Like relative to the impact of what these photos actually are. Because it's like
Hmm.
I sometimes can't wrap my head around the digital reach of these photos. Um, I can
Because they're
see the
everywhere.
numbers on the
Right.
account. Yeah.
Right.
And I've worked with all different sizes of artists that have, maybe a couple tens of thousand followers to like tens of millions. And I just have no concept of like how many homes that's being seen in.
Yeah.
Um, but when it's printed all in one place, as with a very intentional purpose of like the whole body of work all together being the art, like because those are very, that was very carefully selected, very carefully curated as a set, to go well together and represent so many different, like give representation to all the different parts of the tour, whether they're on stage, off stage, each different member, the way that they're interacting together, moments that are a little bit more like quiet and private feeling to like the big on stage moments, just giving representation to all of that. There's no way to recreate that on a screen.
Of course, and I could not agree with you more. I'm interested in when. Well, first of all, what does that process look like? The whole how do you pick? I mean, if you're taking 700 to 1,000 images per night or per tour day, and you have 70 to 80 prints or whatever it
Mhm.
was in the show, how do you where do you even begin? Where are you like, I'm gonna or every so often do you get something and you're like, that I know that I got something tonight, or I know that that one moment is going to be a very special moment. Do you kind of do that as you go?
Yes. And Yeah, so actually, that's a great question because it'll kind of tie back in like part two of that workflow question from earlier as
Oh,
well.
good. Yeah. Yep.
So like a lot of I'll start here. So tour photography requires immediate turnaround. Like I am calling, editing, and delivering all the images from that day that same night. So mine, I have very late nights on tour. I'm usually going to bed at like 3 or 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Um, but for as difficult that is in the moment, it does kind of force me to stay on top of file management. And I
Yes.
have been with them long enough that I've like developed a good system for myself as far as like kind of cataloging stuff. So beyond what they get delivered, I've got catalog systems within my Lightroom that kind of allow me to sort based on like my personal favorites and things that I might want to like use or share in some capacity later. I'm not the best at always staying on top of that, but there was a little bit of a framework that existed already. So rather than going through like every photo I've ever shot, I at least kind of had it whittled down to like a 20% of all of the photos that were like considered more my favorites.
Your favorites.
So
Yeah.
that was a good like narrow down starting place. And then you said something about like, yeah, there are photos just top of mind that like if I were to think of like, oh my, if I could visualize three images in my head right now in this moment that like I immediately think of because I've just become very attached to them or they're just personal favorites or I've,
Yes.
shared or used them in some capacity. So it's like,
Right.
okay, well, I know those are going to show for sure. So in the
Right.
process of selecting for this exhibit, um, I would say about at least a quarter of the images that I ended up printing for this. Um, I knew already going into it, like these have to go in. These are like Anna favorites, like top favorites. And then the rest of it was kind of going through like the second and third tier of favorites and like seeing what fit with the set that I already knew I wanted to use and like
Yep.
what I might have passed over not realizing it was a favorite the first time. It was just a lot of like filtering and then refiltering and then refiltering. Um, that's also how I cull like sessions and shows as well. It's like I touch every photo. I don't edit every photo, but like I look at every photo and it's a process of like multiple passes of elimination rather than going in and doing like positive selects. And I don't know if that might be harder than doing it the other way, but it's the only way that I know that I'm not
Eh,
missing anything that I
isn't
might
it
like.
kind of how our brains work? Because I've heard people
Yeah.
say you have to do it this way or you have to do it this way or whatever. And sometimes there are different ways to make sense. If you only need 10 photos and you have 1,500, like sure, pick your 10 that you want rather than picking your 1,490 that you don't or whatever. Like I
Hmm.
understand the math,
Hmm.
but I think what it really comes down to is how does your brain work? And
Yeah.
everyone's brain's different, and the way that we approach things creatively and is completely different. I that makes me think of other photographers too. And here's what I wanted to get to before we start to wrap things up. You you printed all this work. You had this show. It was an amazing, successful show. But I one of the things that I run into a lot in this industry when I'm talking to different photographers is they're scared to print their work, or
Mm.
they're reluctant for lots of reasons. One of the reasons is because I've heard people say repeatedly, it's not my work's not good enough to print, my work's not good enough to
Oh.
sell, my work's not good enough, to kind of put themselves out there. What I'm wondering is just considering who you are and all that you've seen and all that you've done, what I'm actually looking for some words of encouragement from you to other people. And I'm going to say it's especially women, because so many
Mm.
women are out there and they're hitting those weddings. And a lot of them are just one person shows like you. They go to a wedding, it's just them. Right. And a lot of times they're getting paid for their services, sure, but they're scared to put it in an album, or they're scared to show the bride a beautiful wall portrait of her. And knowing what the impact, you said it was overwhelming, it was emotional for you to see your own work at your own show. Those same things carry over, I think, to weddings and portrait sessions, and those products actually I think it's a disservice for somebody to not offer products like that a lot of
Mm.
times. And I think it's a disservice to the client, but I also think it's a disservice to the photographer. And I'm just wondering if you have anything to say to somebody that's kind of on the fence or is kind of thinking my stuff's not good enough or whatever.
Yeah, well, just first to normalize that, I mean, that's a kind of default mindset that I still struggle with and have to reframe. And I mean, you really nailed it with it. I mean, I only know the female experience,
Of
but
course.
it's anecdotally very common that there's this desire to not inconvenience someone by
Mhm.
with ourselves,
That's a
whether that
very,
be like
very
our,
interesting way to put it, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And yet they're
yeah.
hiring
So,
you.
yeah, yeah. So I will say that doing this job has really helped me break out of that. But I guess what I'm saying is like there, it's still like a wiring thing that I have to overcome, even though it's not something that somebody over here would perceive from me. So yeah, I just want to normalize that it's really tough and it makes
Yeah.
sense, and those people are not alone.
Right.
Um, and something that was like explained to me that was really helpful, just in the sense of like selling your work or marketing yourself in general, is that like people are following you and looking at your work because they want to know what you're
Yeah.
doing and they want to see it. So
Yep.
offering them the option to engage with it further just gives them more options. Like you're not, I think there's a huge leap between offering somebody the option of like a printed piece, for example, versus forcing it on them. Like I
Of
know,
course.
like for myself, that's obviously something I want to avoid as well. That's not very palatable. But um, it, when I was a wedding photographer, something that I found to be very successful, like my favorite product item were the lay flat albums. Like
Hmm.
just that was my personal favorite thing. Like I knew if I were to like have tangible photos in my home, like that would be my favorite format to share them, like the kind of coffee table book type of approach.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the thing that I made most available to my wedding clients. And I found that putting it together for them like helped push that the success of that product, and maybe they would make some tweaks on the back end, but it's
Sure.
I think the obstacle is more so like that the recipient of the physical item, whether it be like your audience or your clients or whatever, um the obstacle is more in just that they don't know how to get there. They don't know what their options are. They don't know how to tackle it. And so it's like, yeah, to your point, you as the photographer are kind of doing them a service by giving them the option of like, well, here's a printed thing that is available to purchase, or like these are your options on how to have a like printed physical image, whether it's like something from an artist that you follow or you're a client of this photographer. They don't know any better than to just like go to the drugstore and like take a thumb drive and print these things off. Most of the time I
Hmm.
find it's just a lack of like
Exactly.
understanding what their options are. So
They
it's
don't
like,
know what
yeah,
they
if
don't
you
know.
yeah, exactly. So if
Right.
you offered prints as an artist, or you offered like physical product services as a photographer to your clients, that just creates less resistance and obstacles for them. And then they get something really beautiful out of it. And also, to your point, it's like if they're your client and they've hired you, like they've already chosen to invest money in you as the
Right.
photographer and somebody that they trust.
Right.
And yeah, I think the component of just like not having the confidence to put it out there, that's maybe more of a mindset thing to work on reframing. But I think just trusting that people want what you have to offer, and if they don't, they'll tell you, but it's not a like hit to your character, and it
Well, and
doesn't
it's
speak to
yeah, it
you as
doesn't
an
mean who you
artist.
are. Right. All of
Yeah.
that. Well
Yeah,
said. Well
and
said.
I think people will find more often than not that like it's received really well.
It generally is. It generally is.
Mhm.
You bringing up the inconvenience piece is really that's going to sit with me for a while. That was really
Mm.
profound. I think that I bet a lot of people that hear this or read this that will resonate with them. Yes, that is how I
Good.
feel. Yes, that makes total sense to me that I don't want to be an inconvenience. But I hope people at the same time understand that, yes, that's understandable that you feel that way. And you don't have to feel that way.
Hmm.
You can overcome that, but it is a mindset shift. All right, I have two more things real quick.
Hmm.
I'm wondering, first of all, this is my favorite question a lot of times, or at least the answers that I get from this are my favorites. But you're looking at someone like yourself in their late teens or early 20s even, and really maybe anyone that's just deciding to start out. What advice do you have? What are you telling a younger version of yourself, or people that have the same sorts of aspirations that you did even back then? Um, when we are, how did you put it, when we're in our 20s, who are audacious,
Yeah,
like
we have a
what
lot of audacity in our 20s.
audacity, like, so
Yeah.
what are you telling those people? And again, men or women, or whatever, but again, specifically women, because I really think that in my time in this industry, it really has gone from an old boys club to just like lots of moms with cameras,
Hmm.
and even that used to be a slight. And I think that's just so ridiculous because, my wife is a mom with a camera,
Hmm.
and I know so many people that are, and you're juggling all kinds of things. So what would you say to yourself, or people like you, um, years and years ago?
Yeah, the main kind of like high level piece of advice I always give is just simply ask for what you want,
Hmm.
and also make it widely known what it is that you want. I think there's a fear that that feels like embarrassing, which I understand because it all obviously creates opportunity for rejection. Um, but I think early on, before I understood how um, these industries even worked, excuse me, I thought that the only way in the door was to be approached by the potential clients. And so in this sense, I'm speaking about music photography specifically. I was like, oh, do
Sure.
you just have to get like discovered by somebody,
Yeah.
or
Right.
you have to like know somebody, or it's like one day somebody will stumble across my work and be like, you're the one that we want.
Right.
And then I was like, wait, no, I think I'm allowed to like go to them. And the kind of interesting thing about the window in which I started this process was like, there was enough internet and social media happening that you could like find contact information for people, but
Hmm.
not so much yet that like those people started to become inaccessible again. It was like kind of this weird cycle that we went through. Um,
Right.
so I would just like find management contact information, like I would send like cold messages on like band profile pages, so like Facebook or Instagram or whatever was available at the time. And I just, yeah, again, like I explained earlier, I just started pitching myself, and most of the time it was crickets, and then some people said no, but one person said yes, and that led to A, B, C, D, so on. It's you're allowed to ask for what you want, and in the sense of the photography industry, that often looks like pitching yourself. Um, if you're wanting to go into something that's like music or more commercial or that type of thing, with private clients like weddings and portraits and things like that, I think that looks like more in the form of marketing.
Hmm.
So pitching yourself is the version of marketing that you use for like the type of photography that I do. And then again, just like telling everybody what it is that you want to do and as specific as you can be about that as possible. Like if you were wanting to get into weddings or shoot more weddings, like it, I think people, and myself included, sometimes look at that as like, oh, if I tell people what I'm wanting to do, it'll look like I'm not busy and then I won't look successful. But it's like that you're not, nobody's gonna come to you for this thing if you don't tell them that you want to do it.
I like I
And
like I like how you're saying you're waiting for someone to be like, oh yeah, that's you're like someone
yeah, you're
just
waiting to be
happens to come along
discovered.
and see you. It's like, oh yeah, we want her. We need her to do
Yeah.
this. But it
Yeah.
sounds like it's a lot of persistence. It's a lot of perseverance. You're like, you just
Hmm.
keep at it. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, you keep at it and do so very vocally. And that kind of ties into the earlier point of like, don't be afraid to like, you know, asking for what you want is a really scary exercise if somebody's afraid of imposing themselves on other
Yeah.
people. But it's
Yeah.
like, you don't have to ask them for anything specific necessarily. You can just be like, hey, I'm looking to do this. If you hear of
Hmm.
anything, let me know. And
Right.
people really love to be the connector. They love to connect other people with opportunity.
Yeah.
It
If it
makes
doesn't
them
work
feel
for
good to be like,
them, they're
yeah,
excited to be like, oh, but I know somebody over here that needs that
yeah,
right now. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a very good
Yeah.
point.
And what, I mean, whether they're in the industry or not, like maybe you're just telling your friends, like, hey, I want to
Yeah.
start shooting weddings. And they're like, oh, well, my cousin's getting married. You want to do their wedding? It's
Right.
like,
That happens all the time.
yeah.
That's a really, really good point. All right. So my last thing is what's next for you? Like what's coming up? What else is happening?
Ooh, um, the beauty of this industry is I never have any idea. No, I plan to continue touring for a while.
Mhm.
The foreseeable future. We'll see what form that takes. Uh, there's some things cooking, but this year, I've had the opportunity to like Coldplay tour is on hiatus at the moment. So I've had the opportunity to just have a total change of scenery and like be home more and
Mm.
get more into lanes of photography that I can't do when I'm gone all the time. So I've been
Mhm.
doing a lot of like studio work and portrait shoots and some
Mm.
editorial stuff. So that's
Mm.
been really fun. I think for me, I'm personally just in a season of like, what can I do that I haven't had time to do in a long time? Like what other photography interests do I have that I can mess around with right now that give me an idea for what to pursue as the next chapter if and when the time comes for a different chapter than music and touring and yeah, so
You're
I
kind of taking a
am
breath a little bit, maybe.
I really am. It's the first time since like the COVID lockdowns, truly, that I've had like this much time at home. So I'm trying to just appreciate that.
Good for you. It
Thank you.
sounds like you deserve it to me. All
Thanks.
right, last thing, where can people find you? What are the socials? What's all the stuff? Like where can
Yeah,
people go?
I'm Anna Lee Media on everything. So
Hmm.
Instagram, my website's annaleemedia.com.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe one day I'll be more active on TikTok than I am, but yeah, I would say the website and the Instagram are the most common things. I also do, so this would have come out a couple months ago. I also do an annual blog roundup of my favorite images from
Mm.
the past year. And it's not like a New Year's post, it's a birthday post. So I do like all my favorite images of that year of my life. So if you go to my
Hmm.
website, go to my blog from there, that's a good way to see a very full, varied set of images that may or may not have ended up like on social media.
Very good. Very good. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom.
Yeah,
Thank you for
of
sharing.
course.
Thank you for collaborating with us. I had a
Oh,
blast.
thank you.
I'm excited to do the next one. So just let me know
Yeah,
whenever you're ready.
I will.